I am Valdrin Celis. I was born on the 6th of Rain's hand, under the star sign of the Mage, to a devout priestess of Mara in the city of Bravil. And while the temple priests were not able to save my mother, I was saved by Mara's grace. The priests raised me as if I was one of their own, teaching me of the 9 divines. While I was grateful for their hospitality, when I turned 20, I left the temple. Wandering the streets of Bravil, I ran into another dark elf named Frathendrothan. The man offered me a lucrative job. I was to serve as a messenger between his estate and the Count of Cheydinhal. I worked for Frathendrothan for over 25 years, never asking questions of what I delivered and why. The pay was too good. I was finally able to live independently in Cheydinhal. There I married the love of my life, who gave birth to our beautiful son. I would still visit the Temple of Mara in Bravil from time to time, to visit my mother's grave. One day, traveling the road from Cheydinhal to Drothan's estate, I was accosted by Imperial soldiers. They claimed the package I had was stolen property of the Empire, and that they had been tracking me for months. Before I was able to deny their claims, I was arrested and sent off to the prison in the Imperial city. I was soon visited by Frathen, who told me I was nothing more than a tool meant to take the fall for his actions. I spent 2 years in this cell, the constant darkness surrounding me and with meager food barely keeping me alive. I awoke one morning to find myself aboard an Imperial ship headed to Morrowind. I do not know what fate awaits me there. The Imperials shipped me to Morrowind yesterday. I had to fill out a form of who I was. Did they not already know? A man named Celis Gravius handed me orders and a package to be delivered to a man named Caius Cosades in the city of Balmora. He told me it was a direct order from the Emperor himself. Why would he need me for such a simple task? Exiting the office, I saw the small town of Seyda-Neen, where the locals showed me how hospitable they really are.
Yo, don't bother me!
Oh, please, by all means, ask me lots of questions.
I don't have a lot of patience for questions,
What?
Outlander.
Why do you disturb me?
You creatures are all the same.
Not wanting more trouble with the Imperials, I began the long journey north. I stopped in a town called Pelagiad, purchased new clothes, and stayed the night at the local tavern. Eventually, I reached Balmora and spoke with Caius, a member of the Blades, a secret organization spread throughout Tamriel with the purpose of protecting and serving the Empire. Caius paid me 200 drakes and immediately ordered me to find work, a cover story. What have I been dragged into? After being rejected by the various guilds of Balmora, I returned to the small village of Seyda-Neen, looking for employment. I found another individual who hated this land as much as I. I decided to help him escape this desolate wasteland. An Imperial legionnaire asked for my help, stating Fargoth, my only friend on Vvardenfell, was hiding something from the law. Late at night, I found Fargoth stashing away gold in a lockpick. Is he shadier than he let on? Apparently a tax collector had disappeared, and the local authority couldn't even send out a search party for him. I found the body of the tax collector, who had clearly been murdered. Upon confronting the murderer, he attempted to murder me as well. Thank Mara for the legionaries. The local lighthouse keeper asked me to retrieve some light wood from a Daedra. What in oblivion is going on in this land? After outwitting the Daedra and returning the wood, the keeper gifted me a magical belt. I feel as if my diminished strength is returning to me already. I've been in Vvardenfell for almost 2 weeks now, and the job hunt continues. I've returned to Balmora and have began looking for more work. I was able to help 2 Khajiits find love, the matchmaking skill I honed in Bravil. I even helped an elderly man fish in Seyda-Neen. The most enjoyable work I've found was delivering a letter to one Darvam Hlaren. It almost felt like I was back home again, doing what I loved. Unfortunately, not many have use for a wretch like myself. I feel so helpless in this land. At least in the Imperial prison, no one expected anything from me. How am I to properly serve the Empire and the Blades if I can barely swing a sword or shoot a bow? I've even had to resort to stealing from the locals to pay for my training for Mara's sake. What would my son have to say if he saw me sink this low? I pray the 9 divines will forgive my transgressions by the time this is all over. In my desperation for more work, I finally ventured to the grand city of Vivec. Such a magnificent sight. An entire canton of the city is relegated to outlanders, aptly named the Foreign Quarter. I found employment quickly, helping a shopkeeper remove an annoying fool from outside his shop. Additionally, a blacksmith atop the canton hired me to steal documents from a rival smith. At this point, no job is beneath me. Afterwards, I spent time at the local bookstore. I spent hours reading, something I hadn't done since I served the temple. Seeking alternative ways to fund my training, I visited an imperial fort outside of Aldrun, hoping to find an unguarded armory of sorts. Although I walked away with nothing, I am beginning to see why many consider the Legion inept. Finally, I decided to deliver a letter from Dralseer Arathi to her son in Sadrith Mora. Traveling between so many places so quickly has taken its toll on me. All I want is a good night's rest. After 3 weeks of combat training, I decided it was finally time to test myself. An Altmer woman begged me weeks ago to clear out a smuggler's den on the outskirts of Seydanin, the perfect test of my ability. It was my first time taking an individual's life. I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. These might have been regular people trying to make a living, doing anything to feed their families. At the same time, the moon sugar they were smuggling into Vvardenfell certainly wasn't helping anyone. I was able to free 4 slaves the smugglers had captured. One of the Khajiit slaves, Dravashai, asked me to help him flee across the inner sea to the huge city of Old Ebonheart. Supposedly, it's a safe haven for freed slaves. I've decided to make the trip with him. I would do anything to help those suffering under the harsh laws of Morrowind. I began my journey towards the town of Ebonheart with Dravashai in tow. Not to be confused with Old Ebonheart, of course. Together, we booked passage across the inner sea towards Old Ebonheart. Once we arrived, Dravashai asked one final favor, to escort him safely to the Elsewhere embassy. He thanked me one last time, before introducing me to the prince, Elsewhere's dignitary for the region. The prince tasked me with finding his missing brother. I began wandering the streets, before being approached by a lawyer, one Renant Alciente. The Breton was looking for a courier and a liar. I must really be giving off a professional look. I delivered the letter as requested to a man named Stabby Jack, who didn't believe a word I said. Jack followed me back to Renant and attempted to silence us both. Thank Mara, our skill surpassed his. Eventually I found myself in the sewers below the city. I can only pray the smell doesn't last a lifetime. The prince's brother, a house cat, proved easy enough to find. With a little coaxing, I was able to convince the kitty to return home. Finally, I met with a diplomat from Valenwood, who made a simple request to convince one of his advisors to give up on her vendetta against the Altmer. It never hurts to have allies in high places. This week began rather differently compared to the last month. Just walking around the Ebon Tower, I was able to find 4 different employers. The head priestess of Archay hired me on to investigate missing bodies from the mortuary. Turns out, some sick orc beneath the sewers was using them for experiments. It ended in bloodshed, with no gold to ease the conscious. The local Imperial Census office was full of work due to the recent demolition efforts. I spent a few days helping the workers clear out the last of the rubble. Atop the tower, a mosaic was being built, and they needed me to get the final few tiles. This turned out to be an immense waste of time. The head of the census office ordered me to find a missing clerk who fled into the city sewers with an important document. Finding the clerk was surprisingly easy, and he agreed to give up the paper in exchange for a bit of booze. The census head was grateful and gifted me an enchanted glove, the only real paying job of the week. Near the end of the week, a letter was delivered to me from Caius. It's time to report in. Caius requested I return back to Balmora. It was time to begin my true service to the Empire. It surprisingly felt comforting returning to Balmora. Despite its many flaws, the people were much kinder to me in Vvardenfell. When I met with Caius, he gave me a seemingly simple task: speak to a man named Hasfat about something called the Sixth House and the Nerevarine. Hasfat was up front, only promising the information if I could retrieve a puzzle cube in the Dwemer city of Arkenthand. Caius needed that information. In the morning, I departed towards the ruins. The place was swarming with unsavory individuals who attempted to kill me rather than talk. I found the cube deep within the dungeon, protected by a skooma addict. My new scamp friend was a welcome addition. Haspat was elated to have the Dwemer cube. He divulged all he knew about the Sixth House, but claimed to know little about the Nerevarine. Caius took the notes I'd taken and immediately sent me to find another contact. No rest for the wicked. It was a rather short week, though a highly lucrative one. Caius instructed me to assist a rather shady orc named Shan. Shan would only tell me about the Nerevarine cult if I went tomb robbing. I was to retrieve the skull of one Levul Andrano. It felt incredibly wrong, defiling a tomb just to get scraps of information. And if the natives ever found out, the skull was retrieved easily enough, with a few Andrano ancestors no longer among the living dead. Shan was pleased, but I felt like I needed a bath. Caius took Shan's notes, suggesting once again to find freelance work. I spoke with Hasfat once again, who had somehow created a key for the lower depths of Arkenthand. I returned and dove deeper into the Dwemer ruins, finding all sorts of valuables beneath the earth. The Dwemer ghosts eventually pushed me back out, but not before making a tidy sum. As much as I enjoyed sharing a bed with Caius, I think it's finally time to get a place of my own. With the coin made from my excursion into Arkenthand, I was finally able to purchase property from House Hlalu on the east side of the river in Balmora. It's rather barren at the moment, but hopefully I can turn it into something welcoming. At least I don't live in a giant bug crab. With my strength finally returning, I decided it was time to pledge myself to one of Vvardenfell's many factions. I made my way to Nisus and met with the Legion commander there. General Darius looked me up and down and told me I wasn't Legion material. Something about my unbrushed teeth, slouch, and unkempt hair. I also have a vague recollection of me accidentally spitting on his face during the meeting. I felt a bit defeated. I saw the Legion regularly in Cyrodiil, and while they were peacekeepers, many of them were not held to this standard. I diverted my frustration towards the Balmora Fighters Guild, who were happy to recruit and get me working. A few simple jobs: killing rats, thieves, and spies. A good-for-nothing grunt. I continued my work for the Fighters Guild, recovering a book, collecting debt money, and hunting for a bounty. Despite me succeeding at every turn, Idis told me I was not skilled enough to continue working with her. I returned to the Imperial Perseus Mercius, who did have work for me, although much more difficult. I was to meet a buoyant armiger outside a place called Vas and slay the necromancers who dwelt within. We worked surprisingly well as a team. To the victor go the spoils. On my return, Perseus was pleased, but had another excursion for me. He needed me to hunt an outlaw, one Nera Benarin. Although I was able to defeat a few of his companions, Nera himself proved to be too much. Thank Mara I recovered that amulet. Not the first time I've had to flee this month. I'm sure it won't be the last. I once again reported into Spymaster Caius. He gave me new orders to return to Vivec City and speak to 3 separate informants. The first, an Argonian, needed rescuing from a tense situation with some racist Dunmer. Once we reached safety, he shared all about the Nerevarine cult and the Ashlanders. The second informant was a Khajiit woman, hiding beneath the cantons. She feared an Imperial census agent was hunting her. Once I convinced the census agent to leave, she divulged all she knew of the Sixth House and increased presence in the smuggling trade. The final informant, a priestess of the temple, I met with in the library of Vivec. She told me everything about a group called the Dissident Priests and why they were being hunted by the temple. With the information in hand, I returned to Balmora and spoke to Caius. Caius was pleased, but told me I should continue working for the Fighters Guild. Immediately I was handed a new contract from Adis to clear out some orcs in a Daedric ruin. I'm already having nightmares, so why not? With as much courage as I could muster, I entered Ashunartes, a Daedric shrine full of filthy Malakath worshippers. I slew the orcs easily enough and dealt with the Daedra they had summoned into Mundas. The head of the cult proved difficult to find, but once she saw me, she flew into a blind fury, swinging her massive axe and crying out for Malakath's aid. Thankfully for me, Daedric princes don't answer her prayers. I was paid handsomely for a job well done. Idis gave me another contract to wipe out the Varethi gang, a group of smugglers. After facing bloodthirsty orcs, these band of nobodies swiftly fell to my blade. Rummaging through their smuggled goods, I was able to find quite a few useful magical items. Perhaps mercenary work isn't all so bad. I continued my training, working with both the Blades and Fighters Guild. My sword arm has never felt stronger. After a few days of rest and recovery, I made my way towards the next contract. I was ordered to clear out the Serrano ancestral tomb. Apparently, it had become infested with Daedra. Just my luck. The tomb itself was massive, and the Daedra within proved to be quite the challenge. I was able to find the demonic hunger behind it all, and ironically enough, killed him using a scroll to summon my own Daedra. As it seems to always go, the hunger was just a figurehead. The real threat, a Dremora lord, was actually behind the incursion. With a swift blade and blessings from some of the small shrines within the tomb, I was able to clear out the infestation. I made off with a few parting gifts before I left. It's funny how fast you lose your morals when money is on the line. I returned to Adis, who paid me well, but stated any more contract work would need to be done elsewhere. Maybe Caius has something for me. My study of the arcane has been going about as well as it could. The priests of the nearby temple were kind enough to share their secrets for a modest fee. I grasp the concepts easily enough, but the actual casting part, there's room for definite improvement. Caius finally laid out why I was rescued from the Imperial dungeons in the first place. He, or rather the Emperor, believed that I will fulfill the prophecies set forth for Nerevar's rebirth. They believe I can become the Nerevarine, the man who just 2 months ago could barely walk without passing out. Surely this is some sort of cruel joke. I never asked to be this. Traveling to the Ashlander camp gave me a long time to think. At the camp, I was met with a flurry of insults, but what else is new? Although they like to pretend they're better than us, some drakes tossed around easily allowed me to speak to their Ashkan. Their Ashkan informed me they would only divulge the information Caius needed if I became a clan friend. Grab a family bow from a cursed tomb, and they'd accept me. A normal day for me at this point. This last week has felt like a blur, like I'm just going through the motions. I was able to retrieve the Bonebiter bow for the Ashkan, who gifted it to me and declared me as a clan friend. I should be grateful, but I cannot stop thinking what Caius told me. The wise woman of the clan went on about the prophecies, the meaning behind each one, just tacking on new trials and what is expected of me. I've decided to sleep here for the night, but I'll be gone before the sun rises. It's time to leave. Please, Sarah, I wish to be somewhere else right now. I'll pay any fee. Just get me off of this island. After a few days at sea, I finally arrived in the small village of Tain, a place to lay low. Every day since Frathen first approached me, I've been in service to another. When Frathen was done with me, he disposed of me like rubbish, and then the Imperials free me, only to use me for their own selfish purposes. How long until Caius and the Blades dispose of me? How long until I'm once again imprisoned, framed for something another did? I'm not proud of what I've done, fleeing Vvardenfell, but I am too proud to continue being a tool for some skooma addict's wild dreams. At least here I am free, I can do what I want, when I want. I actually enjoy helping the people of Morrowind, the truly troubled souls, with their real problems. It's when I'm expected to save everyone. It's just too much. I'm sorry, Salvina. I hope you believe I'm long dead. I'd never want you to see the kind of man I've become. I continued my work in Tain, following rumors told by the townsfolk. A woman asked if I would pretend to be her recently betrothed in order to fool her mother. Luckily for me, I can be very persuasive. I also made my way to the lighthouse to help deal with smugglers. I found out the smugglers had been dealt with, and then dealt with the man who had dealt with them. While the people of Tarn were nice enough, it was time to leave once again. I made way to the nearby Imperial fort, not the smartest idea in retrospect. I was able to find employment helping a Khajiit study the long-winded history of the fortress. After asking a few questions to the local priest, I delved deep into the waters and found an ancient Nordic axe, thus proving this fort was likely built upon ancient Nord ruins. Not wanting to overstay, I decided to head southeast, where I eventually arrived in the city of Androthen. Surely there are people here who could use my help. Idle hands are the Daedra's playthings. I began truly wandering the streets of Androthen. The Hlalu city was massive, dozens of shops, familiar guilds, and at one point I even found myself playing dice with skooma addicts. Such a nice town. Shopping around, I was able to find a dashing pair of red shoes and a fancy shirt. Upon seeing my resplendent new outfit, people were practically tripping over one another to hire me. One such employer handed me an ebony blade to be delivered to a mysterious man using a code word in Alma's Thir. Felt almost like I was working for the Blades again. Fresh off the ferry in Alma's Thir, I once again met Vodunius Nucius, the legend himself, all the way from Tain. I could not stand to see my best friend in such bad shape once again, so I offered to find the thieves who stole from him and swore an oath to find his shoes. No man should be without his loafers. Ah, Alma's Thir, one of the more beautiful cities I've seen so far in Morrowind. I made my way to the Thirsty Saint Inn and searched for a mysterious individual, with only the code word Amethyst Drew. Clearly my skills as a secret agent have not dwindled. I found the woman waiting for me, who directed me to her employer, a Dunmer, in the Canton sewers. When I presented this ebony blade to the man, one Les Vervul, he claimed it was fake and that I'd need to get the money back from my initial employer in Andothrin. Before leaving Alma's Thir, I had one last thing to do, help my oldest friend, Vodunius Nucius, find his shoes. Although I was able to recover his missing gold, the shoes eluded me. I went back to where I had last seen him, only to find out he had been imprisoned by the Indoral guards. With a few quick bribes, I was able to free the poor man, only for him to complain. I didn't get his shoes, another ungrateful Imperial. I returned to Andothrin once again, and began collecting debts, one for Helis Verval and another for the Fighters Guild. And I may have ruined a woman's stupidly named business, all in a day's work. I could really use a drink. Please, Sarah, a bed for the night. It feels good to finally rest someplace warm. Huh? Who's there? My gold! Someone has taken it! Where is the rest of the gold?
I'm sorry, it's not here. I'm supposed to give you this letter.
If you'd like the rest of your gold returned to you, Vvardenfell, meet me in Old Ebonheart. I'll be waiting for you at the Empress Kataria Tavern. Don't make me wait.
I'd like to chart a passage to Old Ebonheart. I can't pay you now, but I swear I will return and pay you double the amount.
Vvardenfell, you came all this way for a few thousand lousy drakes.
I came to take back what is mine.
So, when it's something that belongs to you, you make an effort, but not when it affects others.
What are you even talking about?
Caius wrote to me, told me how you ran away. Sailed south and fled rather than face the trial set before you.
Who do you think you are, Fetcher, to even pretend to know the trials I face?
I know, because I too had to face my own destiny. 10 years ago, I entered into Aetherius and saved the people of the Empire. I know what you have to deal with, my son.
Father,
The Blades need you. The people of Vvardenfell need you. The world needs you, Valdrin. I know your mother would be proud to see the man you have become.
Staying too long in one's place proved to be financially stupid. My drakes were stolen by a local thief, who told me if I wished to recover the rest, I needed to meet with someone in Old Ebonheart. The man turned out to be my father, the last person I ever expected to see. We talked for hours. He told me of his past, how he once saved Tamriel, and how now the world was depending on me. He told me it was my destiny to save Vvardenfell and our people. He told me Mom would be proud of me. I returned to Balmora and finally reported in to Caius. Caius forgave me immediately and sent me out to raid and investigate a 6th House base near Gnarmok. The locals told me of a cave nearby named Ilunibi, where the cult was located. I carved my way through these vile creatures and met with one known as Dagoth Garris. He offered me a proposal from the one they call Dagoth Ur. If I was to rejoin him at Red Mountain, he would forgive me and allow me to serve under him. I cut Dagoth Garris down. No one would turn me from my destiny. Unfortunately, my excursion into the 6th House base has led me to contract Corporus. I'm to visit Dvaithfire, a mad sorcerer in Telfire. If the gods cannot cure me, perhaps a Telvanni can. My brain feels as if it's slowing, and my mattress sags to the floor. More disturbing dreams continue to haunt me. This time, I was even attacked in the center of Balmora. Must be the disease that leads them to me. I visited Telfir and spoke to Dvaith. The man was quite eccentric. He said he would only cure me if I would retrieve some dwarven boots from his corpusarium. I'm still convinced he was trying to kill me. The man holding the repaired boots was, and I'm being quite serious here, a Dwemer, a living, breathing Dwemer. He told me he was the last of his kind. I felt pity for the man, isolated from his people, slowly dying to the same disease as I. We talked for hours. I returned to Dvaith, who was pleased. Dvaith promised a cure, but only if I were to drink it, then and there. It worked, sort of. The disease would no longer cause me any issues. After my success, I reported in one final time to Caius. He told me he had been recalled back to the Imperial City, and that I was in charge now. I offered to escort Caius to Ebonheart. We shared a few drinks and said our farewells. Maybe once this is all over, we can get the wives together. It's been an eventful week, to say the least. With Caius gone, I've been given sole responsibility to end the blight in Morrowind. Caius gave me one final order, to find Mera Milo. When I searched her room, all I found was a note. She had been taken by the Ministry of Truth in Vivek, atop Bar Dao. With some skill and Mehra's foresight, we were both able to escape the prison cell. She told me what she had learned about the dissident priests, a cult who questioned the divineness of the tribunal. I made my way to their secret base, called Olamayan, making sure to visit only at dawn or dusk. Gilvas Barello, their leader, told me all he knew about the lost prophecies. Much of what he told me went over my head. Thankfully, I was smart enough to write all of it down. I met once more with Nabani Maisa and relayed the prophecies to her. She began going down the list of trials I had to fulfill before I could be declared the Nerevarine. The first trial had to do with the circumstances of my birth. An uncertain day to uncertain parents. According to Nabani Maisa, I've already passed this trial. The second trial was to be immune to all blight and disease. Corpus took care of that little detail. For the third trial, Sul-Matul, chief town of the tribe, gave me a task to clear out Kogorun, an ancient Dunmeri stronghold, to prove my strength, courage, and cunning. While I no longer doubt my courage, perhaps it is time to learn what I can from the great houses of Morrowind. House Redoran is well known for their strength and courage. If I can prove my worth, maybe they'd teach me the ways of their house. I've been accepted and welcomed into House Redoran. The members of its house are honorable and brave, just as I thought. In contrast to the Fighters Guild, the Redorans do truly care about their people. My first task was to help a woman deal with murderous mudcrabs along the coast. Then I was to rescue a missing trader, dueled a man who dare steal from our house, bludgeoned some bandits, and protected a Redoran lord from assassins, all in a week's work. The lord I saved from assassins, one Athin Sarethi, told me he would sponsor my membership into the house proper if I would save his son from a rival, Bolivan Venim. More than a few members of Venim's house had to die to rescue him. Shortly after, his son had been almost possessed by a gifted ash statue to murder his friend, just like the kind Chaos and I were investigating. Perhaps House Dagoth's power runs deeper than the people of Vvardenfell like to believe. With the destruction of the statue, Athin Sarethi's son was cured and safe for the time being. Although the murder was tragic, it's important that House Redoran continues to see is the corrupting influence of House Dagoth and the real and present danger they can pose. Perhaps in the future I can turn the might of their house towards ending the blight. My work for House Redoran continues. Already I've come to respect the house and what they stand for. After spending so much time sneaking and hiding in the shadows, it's nice to just deal with issues head-on. I've even won my first official duel against a member of House Halau, truly a badge of honor. The quests are not all glamorous, though. I had to help a grief-stricken noble regain his sanity by rescuing his daughter from a very familiar Telvanni magister. Then I escorted a man undergoing a sacred pilgrimage. We spoke at length. I hope when there is time, I will be able to make the same journey. House Redoran does seem to be plagued by Dagothur's curses being so close to Red Mountain, even more so than the other houses. A Redoran noble, one Lady Morvain, had her own estate infested by the minions of Dagoth, unsurprisingly caused by an ash statue. With her support and Sarethi's, I am well on my way to earning the complete trust of House Redoran. I've spent the last few weeks brown-nosing the counselors of House Redoran. It's the only way to become a full councilman. The things these councilmen asked for were no small tasks. Mainly, I was tasked with shutting down Caldera Mine and starting a slave revolt. I wonder if Caius would be proud of me, or would he be angry that I've disrupted the Empire's ebony operations? At the very least, the people operating the mines were corrupt slavers, so I don't feel too bad. One man, Minor Erobar, seems to be the lone councilman who refuses to support my advancement into the Redoran inner circle. At least construction has begun on my new stronghold, Bal Isra. From here, I can protect and support House Redoran, and maybe finally get the respect I deserve. The unthinkable has happened. A group of people in Vvardenfell enjoy my company. I know it's hard to believe, but I promise you, House Redoran respects me. And why wouldn't they? I've served honorably, dutifully, and have risen to the rank of Archmaster. I did have to duel the previous Archmaster to the death. Luckily for me, he was not expecting a horde of Daedra and undead. The estate gifted to me, Bal Isra, finished construction as well. A rather nice home, fancier than anything I've ever owned before. While my understanding of the cultural side of Vvardenfell has expanded, I think it's time to take the plunge and delve into the religious aspects. I need to fully understand why the Dunmer worship these three individuals if I'm ever to earn their trust. This entire month has absolutely flown by. In my preparations to finally join the Tribunal Temple, I've had to make more than a few monetary sacrifices. Weeks were spent reading the religious texts of the temple, trying to seek greater understanding in who the Dunmer are on a religious level. Meanwhile, I began taking public speaking lessons from a House Hlalu member who shall not be named, and while I'm no Tiber Septim, I feel as if I can finally explain myself to others in a more sophisticated manner. After the training, I met with one of the priestesses in the temple, who formally allowed me to join the temple with one caveat. Every member must complete a pilgrimage to each of the 7 shrines spread throughout Vvardenfell. Dutifully, I visited each of these shrines, completed numerous tasks, and proved myself worthy to her. While I've assisted the people of Morrowind before, I believe tending to the people's spiritual needs, especially now, is more important than ever. The temple continues to surprise me. I began the week healing a Daedra worshipper. If I had told any priest of the 9 Divides that a Daedra worshipper deserved our help, I'd be burned at the stake. Then they sent me to deal with a false incarnate, someone who thinks they are Nerevar reborn. Can you imagine someone who would even begin to believe that about themselves? Clearly the people here are deeply sick. Later on, during my pilgrimage to Margan, a Daedra told me he'd rape my corpse, so you know, I'm making friends. Finally, I was sworn to silence as I made my way to the Sanctus Shrine. Going a full day without speaking to anyone has been the hardest task so far. As I continue to impress the members of the temple, I'm hoping they will let me in on the more secretive aspects of their church. Surely something else is going on that I can't see yet. Caius would have figured it out by now.